Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the BNI Southeast Tennessee podcast. My name is Michael Crosa. I'm having a blast today with Elaine Zambos, Director of BNI Southeast Tennessee. We're rocking and rolling today, aren't we?
We are.
And we are rocking and rolling specifically on our series about chapter leadership roles within the BNI chapter. And today, what are we talking about?
We are talking about the visitor host.
Visitor host, right on. This podcast is produced by Chattanooga Podcast Studios, helping businesses and organizations make a deeper connection with their audience through the art of podcasting. An ideal referral for me would be a professional organization with a state or national presence. You can get in touch with me, Michael Crosa, by going to chatpod.com. That's chat with two T's, like Chattanooga, which is linked in the show notes below. Okay, Elaine, so we're talking about the visitor host today. This is a great position to meet people and do all kinds of things really important in chapters and growing the membership. So take it away. What can you tell us about the visitor host?
So I would love to change the name of visitor host to the director of first impressions of our chapter meetings.
Done.
Yeah.
Decree.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll tell Ivan.
There you go. Yeah. So, because if you think about it, that is the first impression for our visitors when they arrive. So, we really need to think about what is that impression that we want our visitors to have, and basically setting up those expectations. I've had situations where we've had some really epic visitor host successes.
Nice.
And we've had some epic visitor host failures.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, again, it's all about the expectation of what people want to have happen, right? So, what are the responsibilities? The visitor host really needs to get to the meeting really 20 to 25 minutes ahead of the posted time. 30 minutes would be great of the posted time, because our visitors are usually the first ones who show up.
Right.
And so if the visitor host gets there and they're setting up the room, that does not lead for a good first impression for the member, right? So if you think about it, the visitor host is the hostess of the party. And so if you're throwing a party and you want your guests to be there at 6 o'clock, you are not getting dressed at 6 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
You are already dressed and ready to receive your guest.
Right.
So it's the same way with the visitor host. And so the visitor host wants to make sure that the room is set, that they have a welcoming area. So in Southeast Tennessee, we have our visitor host table, which includes the sign-in sheet. We have a one-page handout with policies, procedures, guidelines, and then what we call our expression of interest card, which the visitor fills out and gives them, all the different acronyms and what those mean.
Right.
And then the visitor host, once they do those steps, gives them all their information. We have a second visitor host. That person needs to take that visitor and introduce them to different people in the room. So those are right at the meeting is what they're doing. But there's a lot of things behind the scenes as well. So again, with our BNI app, as a member, it's very important for us to make sure we register that visitor that they're attending. We register them for several reasons. One, that way the visitor gets an email to say, hey, we're really looking forward to seeing you on Monday at 4:30. And then secondly, it lets the chapter members know who's going to be attending. And then the visitor host gets that information as well with that person's contact information. So I was sharing last week with some friends that I went to a meeting in Indiana. So I registered to visit this chapter meeting in Newcastle, Indiana.
Cool. And
the night before the meeting, I got a phone call from, I want to say it was the chapter president. He called to say, hey, we see that you're registered to visit our chapter meeting. We're really looking forward to seeing you there. And if you have any questions or problems, this is my phone number. So, be sure to call me. The next morning, I get a text message, and the text message said, hey, we're looking forward to seeing you. It's really dark at our venue. Let me share with you the best place to park, and I will be at the door to greet you, so you'll know you're at the right place. I'm like,
That's
oh my
awesome.
gosh, it was awesome. So when I got there and I parked, and they were right, it was dark.
Yeah.
I got there, I parked, and they took me inside the room. They introduced me to the different people in the room. I felt like $1 million in that room before that
Yeah.
meeting ever started.
That's awesome.
It was incredible. And so that really is the best visitor experience, because by the time that meeting was over, I was like, well, I want to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what we want. We want our visitors to feel like, yes, I want to be a part of this. So that's what happens before the meeting, is those visitor touches. And the one thing I would add as well, as a visitor, when you're making those phone calls ahead of time saying, hey, we're looking forward to seeing you there. Here's a great place to park. I'll meet you at the door. I'll introduce you to people. And while you're here, you're going to get the opportunity to introduce yourself. Now, I never used to think that was important until, and you may remember this, we had a visitor at our chapter, and he didn't realize, no, he was a substitute that night, I believe.
Was he?
But
I remember exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, you do. Because this poor guy didn't realize he was going to stand up and speak publicly.
Yeah.
And when he was first introduced, it made him nervous. Well, he kept getting up and leaving the room. Right?
Yes.
And I just thought he was taking a phone call or something.
Right.
Well, our chapter happens to meet at a restaurant that has a bar.
Yeah. In the afternoon.
Yeah.
Happy hour
And
chapter.
he was doing shots because he was so nervous about talking. And I called him an Uber at the end of the meeting to get him home.
That.
He couldn't drive.
Wow.
And because he was afraid to speak publicly. So I will ask that the visitor host please let your visitor know that they're going to be speaking publicly and introducing themselves.
Yeah.
So anyway, epic. That's only happened the one time
Right.
in my 15 plus years of BNI that I know of. But I regress. So the visitor host after the meeting also is there to talk to the member, take their expression of interest card, talk to them about the benefits of joining BNI, and then making sure that she or he talks to the quality assurance person, the membership committee, so that they know to set up that interview time based on, if they were a 1 or a 2 on their expression of interest card. So that's the orientation, if you will, after the meeting. Mm-hmm. So, but if you think about the visitor host, it's really the host. She really, or he, at our chapter, it's like Karen, and Karen's amazing. But that's the hostess of the party, or the host for the party. And several years ago, it was the Walden chapter, and we had a gentleman who, his name was Mel. Mel was the visitor host for years and years and years. Like, that was the job he wanted. And what he did is he set up a 1-to-1 with every visitor.
Wow.
He grew his book of business by doing 1-to-1s with visitors.
I bet he did.
Yes.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Because you are the visitor, like the director of first impressions, right? They already have a great first impression of you. Why wouldn't they book a 1-to-1 with you?
Totally. And so I'm sure that helps Mel's business, like you said, but then also
it helped the chapter.
Right. It helps demonstrate, hey, this is what we do. Because I know that, we're talking about acronyms. I've had visitors a lot of times when I bring them, they'll lean over and be like, what's a 1-to-1?
Right.
Or
right.
what's a CE? And like,
exactly.
I would, totally feel, oh yeah, this is what this is. And this is what thank you for closed business means. And this, so it is helpful, I think, to have those ready to go.
Because if we think about it, every single person that comes into the room, regardless if they join BNI or they don't join, but they are potential customers because they all have needs. They need insurance or financial planning, or they need a bank account, or, whatever. Like, they need health care. They all have needs. And we have to remember that every single person that comes in the room is a referral source for us, or a potential referral.
Yeah. Yeah. Something else with visitors, I think it's helpful to think of creative ways. That sounds funny, but yeah, creative ways to bring people in, or creative things. I think a lot of times it's easy to get locked into this idea of like, oh, well, it can only be like a real estate. We're looking for a real estate agent. I can only invite, right? But I've brought to our Friendsgiving, I brought a teacher friend of mine. He's an economics teacher.
Right. And
just being able to see like other things that's happening in the town gives him ideas that he can bring back to his students. Right.
Right.
Kind of ambiguously grows BNI's presence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Indirectly, I guess is a better. So like, yeah, thinking like it doesn't just have to be somebody who's going to join tomorrow. Right. Bringing visitors is helpful. And then something we're starting in happy hour that I'm excited to see how it goes is a substitute drive. And the idea is that, whenever we need a substitute, a lot of times it's last minute, right? Something came up. So it's helpful to have somebody ready to go who's your go-to substitute. But that can be a heavy ask. So invite somebody to come with you to a meeting and just say, hey, I might need a substitute one day. I would love to show you what our meetings are like so that, you know what to do and all that kind of stuff. Would you mind coming with me?
Right. And again, that person who shows up that's going to be a potential sub in the future also is maybe a referral source or a direct referral for somebody in the room. And, we are also talking about like the new member ribbon cutting.
Yeah.
Like when that new member gets to talk do their feature presentation for the first time.
Right.
And we invite
people. Make an event out of it.
Making an event and invite people to hear their presentation. So again, we're really piling it on the visitor host now with all these new ideas to increase visitors.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm glad we talked about it. I feel like I learned a lot more already just by talking about it.
Right.
Cool. Well, stay tuned because we will be continuing our conversation about leadership roles. We've still got the education coordinator, mentorship coordinator, and maybe a couple others left. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll find out. Yeah. My name is Michael Crosa with Chattanooga Podcast Studios. This is Elaine Zambos, director with BNI Southeast Tennessee, and we have recorded this episode in Wavelength Studios, beautiful downtown Chattanooga, with a beautiful set made by Mad Honey Rentals. If you enjoyed your show today, share it with your chapter. That sort of thing really helps us grow. Word of mouth is the best way. Really, I mean, that's what BNI is founded on. That's the whole point, word of mouth. So please help spread the message, help spread the podcast. And Elaine, I'm a new dad.
You are a new dad. Do you have a joke for me?
I sure do. I started a junk removal business. It didn't go well, though. I trashed all my savings. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week on the BNI Southeast Tennessee podcast.